Well, excellence in agronomy, in my view, is probably one of the boldest and most innovative approaches that the agricultural research community is embarking on to try and solve a problem that has been there for almost half a century. And that problem is, how do we bridge the gap between the good science that happens in these science institutes and what happens in that shamba or in that farm in the village? Because what we are finding is that the science is good, but the yields on small-scale farms are still not where they need to be. The use of chemicals, the use of fertilizer, the management of the soil is not really reflective of what we already know works and what is available for farmers out there. So excellence in agronomy is trying to bridge that gap, the knowledge and practice gap that exists in crop farming across the world right now. This challenge is a global challenge. It is true that certain parts of the world, like Asia and Southeast Asia, have really advanced in adopting good practices, and the same goes for Latin America. But there are still gaps in those regions as well. So Excellence in Agronomy is actually a global program that will operate in about 6 regions of the world. And these regions are Latin America on the one side. And then on the African continent, we've got 2 main regions, Western Central Africa and then Eastern Southern Africa. We've got a region that covers North Africa, but also Central West Asia. And then we've got 2 regions in Asia, that is Southeast Asia and South Asia. So this program is a global program that will look at all those regions and really try to respond to the challenges that still exist in advancing agronomy. And essentially, what is agronomy? Agronomy is those decisions that a farmer makes from the time they decide they're going to grow a crop. What will I grow? What variety will I plant? How do I prepare the land? How do I put crop nutrients or fertilizer? How do I control pests? And ultimately, how do I harvest and take this crop off the land? So we are trying to influence those decisions. And across the world, there are gaps that we think as Excellence in Agronomy we can meet. In 2022, when we are launching this initiative, a lot has changed. A lot has changed in terms of communication technologies. A lot has changed in terms of our ability to process large amounts of data and convert it into insights that can help farmers make simple decisions. So the way that we want to do this is that, first of all, we want to leverage the power of technology right now, which allows us, in our view, to really get good insights from the data about climate, about soils, about crop growth, etc., and use that capacity, that huge computational power and capacity that exists today that didn't exist 20, 30 years ago, to really generate these insights that we can now deliver to farmers. Now, what COVID has done is that it has pushed the world to move towards much more mobile-driven systems of communications. So whereas in the past we might have needed 1,000 extension agents to reach 1 million farmers, with technology we could actually do more farmers with fewer extension agents, because we can communicate to people using mobile telephones, using SMS, using interactive voice recording. So we are looking at a multi-pronged approach of delivering these insights to farmers, and also, most importantly, getting feedback. And if you look at the crop production scenario across the world, especially in the so-called global south, there are some things that are common. One of them is what we call the yield gap. If you look at the varieties that are available and what we know these varieties can produce, and when we look at what the farmers are getting, there's a gap. So we call that the yield gap. One of the things we would like to do is to contribute to bridging the yield gap. So one of our KPIs focuses on yield quality, yield stability. We want to improve the yields of farmers, but at the same time improving their profitability and also the quality of the produce that they produce. The second KPI is really around climate change. If you look around, you cannot assume that growing approaches that we are using 5-10 years ago are still applicable today. We've got extreme weather situations. So what we're trying to help farmers to do is to improve their resilience, their adaptive capacity, and where we can to improve their ability to mitigate the impacts of climate change. So we are focusing on ensuring that farmers, wherever they are getting the right package of solutions to deal with climate change and deal with it more effectively. The third area is this whole issue of resource use efficiency, and a lot of it has to do also with climate change. Water is becoming scarce. So how do we help farmers use water much more efficiently than they are doing now? So we want to see a change in how farmers are using resources like water efficiently. We want to see a change in how farmers are using resources like time. If you look at the drudgery associated with agriculture in small-scale systems, it's not sustainable. We want people to have more free time to do other things. And so in some areas, we're promoting mechanization, we're promoting slightly shorter season varieties, which will help farmers to save time. But the third and very important resource we think farmers can save on or improve efficiency on is crop nutrients. Fertilizers. Right now with the Ukraine war, fertilizers have more than doubled in price. So you don't want to use more than you need. So how do we help them with their resource efficiency? And last but not least, it's this issue of improving soil health. Most crops will need soil to be grown across the world. And yet, if we look at the degradation of our soils and the decline in the health of these soils, we are convinced that work can be done to really empower farmers with the right tools to improve the health of their soil. So those 4 KPIs really represent what we feel we will change or will contribute to changing over the next 10 years. I think the biggest challenge, to be very honest, is personally what I call the last mile. It's one thing to have the good science, it's one thing to have the technology that crunches this data and comes up with solutions. But how do you effectively get that into the hands of each and every farmer who needs it for them to make a decision? So our biggest challenge, I think, is going to be what we call behavioral science. How do we influence change in behavior by farmers? I think it's going to be harder than we think. And I believe that a lot of our efforts ultimately and our success is going to be dependent on how well we are able to get these unique tools and approaches into the hands of farmers who can use them. And behind that is a system, right? It's a system that involves national agriculture research colleagues. It's a system that involves extension systems in the countries, both private and public sector. It's a system that involves NGOs. So that's why if you look at the work packages that we have created for excellence in agronomy, we have tried to anticipate where the leverage points are, and therefore we are really creating focus around unlocking the potential of getting this last mile idea really going. Yeah. Our ability to craft and to put together these really creative, innovative and impactful partnerships is going to define the success of this initiative. And at a personal level, that's what I'm aiming for. I'm aiming for creating platforms and partnerships that will deal with what I said is the biggest challenge. I'm very passionate about small-scale farmers. I've worked with small-scale farmers for over 2 decades of my working life. And when things work for them, it really warms my heart. So my ambition is that the 20 million farmers we've said we want to impact in the life of this program, I want to be able to see each and every one of them and see their lives change and see agricultural systems in the regions of the world where I've grown up and where people like me have grown up really transforming. I feel we've got one shot at this, and I want to be part of that, and that's what keeps me very excited.